fear. What do we think of when we hear the word terrorist? Many of us will visualize a man with dark skin, perhaps wearing a turban. And although some of these described aspects of organizations such as ISIS, do we often stop to think of any other form of terrorism? A common definition for terrorism is the unlawful use of violence or intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political goals. When Brenton Tarrant, a white supremacist, killed 51 people and injured even more at the Christchurch massacre, this was, by definition, a terrorist act in pursuit of a political goal. We can see other movements such as white supremacy are, if anything, becoming more prominent. In 2016, British Labour MP Jo Cox was shot and stabbed to death. And in 2017, 6 people were killed during evening prayers at a mosque in the Quebec City of Canada. All of these attacks have been linked in some way to white supremacists. So if Westerners can be terrorists, what does that say about us more generally? Can we think of ourselves as the more civilized, more advanced culture when we spawn such acts? I don't remember growing up seeing movies where the good guys, holding bomb trigger in hand, threaten everyone while proclaiming they're keeping the peace. But instead of saving the day in the case of Middle Eastern countries, the West has intervened to create power vacuums, to encourage megalomaniacs with autocratic tendencies to take their place. And on top of all this, after us graciously saving them, we take their ever-valuable oil. What can we argue separates us from terrorism? How did we get to this stage? Why would someone want to be feared? Why would a political activist, or indeed a government, seek fear? We all have natural instincts for self-preservation. When we feel threatened, our fight or flight instinct kicks in, and blood is redirected to the muscles and adrenaline is released into our system. Whenever we hear someone recall fight or flight experiences, it's often described as a blur of events. So although our fight or flight response grants us access to our peak physical capacity, it simultaneously limits our ability to think ahead or understand the consequences of our actions. So if fear can override even basic logic skills, what happens when someone uses fear to control our responses? When I was researching for this speech, I came across a word I hadn't seen before: demagogue. I discovered it means a political leader who seeks support by appealing to the desires, prejudices, and fears of ordinary people rather than using rational argument. Our leaders use the power of fear to misguide the public in their ad campaigns because more often than not, there's no repercussions for doing so. We can see how Tony Abbott employed fear with his famous 3-word slogans such as axe the tax, repay the debt, and most famous of all, stop the boats. This particular phrase had massive negative repercussions for boat people. But Abbott wasn't the first politician to use such tactics. Welfare recipients are often vilified as dole bludgers who are not wanting to work and rotting the system. In the last federal election, 2 major attacking points were about the death tax and the retirement tax, another use of fear-provoking topics. The fundamental reality here is that fear, indeed terror, is being used by those who seek to gain political advantage because it effectively disarms our ability to make sensible decisions and choices. It may take the form of violence or persuasion, but at heart, it is the same force of destructive change. For this reason, the term terrorist can be applied to radical bombers and political demagogues alike. I'm speaking about this issue because I too am fearful. I'm fearful of growing up in a society where demagoguery is used to instill us with the illusion of choice. Our politicians point out scapegoat groups and declare they are the problem, which segregates everyone into smaller communities that can be blamed. Refugees, Indigenous Australians, millennials, baby boomers, and so on. Our leaders then use fear to divide and conquer us relentlessly, alluding that refugees are terrorists, that Aboriginals are lazy drunkards, and so on. If only we encourage more independent thinking and furthermore the idea that both sides of an argument have an important story to tell, this would help our society become more resilient to fear-like tactics and create a fairer, stronger, and fearless society for all Australians.